Hey, CHCC, we are back answering some Bible questions, and one of the questions that I thought that we would answer has to do with Christmas, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to Christmas. And one of the questions that I have for you, Richard, is, was Jesus born on December the 25th? Is that actually his birthday?
Yeah, and the reality is we don't really know what calendar day Jesus was born on. There's a lot of reasons why we landed on December 25th as a reason to celebrate the birth of Jesus, but we don't know. I've heard some people speculate it was during the summer, some during the spring. Others are that it's in December but not on the 25th. But the reality is we just don't know, and the Bible doesn't say anything about that.
Our nativity scenes.
Yeah.
We have our wise men or magi being there.
Yeah, and three. There's always three.
There's always three. And
right.
So a couple of things to kind of walk through. First of all, we don't know the number, correct? There could have been three. We know that there was more than one, but could have been two or could have been 50 or whatever. But the second question is, in our nativity scenes, they're always right there at the birth of Christ. How accurate is that?
Yeah, so the reason we come with the three is because there's three gifts listed. And so it's just kind of simple for us to think about three wise men, each of them carrying a gift, even though that's probably not how it happened. And the reality is, in the book of Matthew, when it talks about the Magi coming, they see the star appear when the baby is born. They travel from the east, so a great distance, which is not like hopping in your minivan and driving from Houston to San Antonio. This is a trek that's going to take them some time. And there's also, it says when they arrive at the house. And so typically when we think about Jesus being born, especially from the Gospel of Luke, we talk about being born in a cave or a stable. So he didn't have lodging that he was staying in. But when the wise men, the Magi, find him, he's in a home at this point. And so there's probably some time that's passed.
So maybe even up to the age of 2?
Yeah, so in the book of Matthew, they go to Herod first looking for the king. And then when they don't return, Herod goes and he kills a bunch of babies in response to wanting to knock out this threat to his kingdom. And he kills all the babies 2 and under. So that maybe give us some insight into how old Jesus may have been when the Magi show up at his house.
Well, one last question I kind of struggle with is, it just seems not very nice to not take in Mary when it says, hey, there was no room for them. I mean, and we know that culture had a lot of hospitality.
It sure did.
And for them to have a pregnant woman there and to say, hey, there's no room for you, help me kind of fill in the blanks here, because that's really hard for us to understand. And I think culturally it would be hard for...
Well, and we also talk about it being like in an inn, right? There's no room in the inn.
Like a Motel 6 or
no
Best Western or something along those lines.
Yeah, but the reality is that the guest home would have been part of the home in general. But there's probably not space for Mary for a lot of reasons. One of them is the fact that she's getting ready to give birth.
Right.
And that wouldn't have been happening in the home because there's so many things that were considered unclean with the birthing process. So we kind of think of her being kind of shoved to the side, but we have all these extra people who are coming to town for this census that's talked about there in the New Testament. And there's not that she's pushed out because she's unwanted, but it's just that the house is overcrowded. She's going through birth, which is going to make the whole group ceremonially unclean.
Right.
Yeah. And so they have to make special accommodations for her. And so while it may seem odd to our modern ears that there's no vacancy at the end, the reality is they made space for her in the best way they could, making best of the circumstances.
We want to encourage you to take just a moment and just think about Jesus' birth. I know that this season is really busy, shopping and baking and concerts and all kinds of things. And so we just want to encourage you, if you just take a moment right after this video and just think about the birth of Christ and just a chance to unplug. We'll see you next week.